This is the RBTZTV Radio Network. I'm John Casson. Do you ever meet someone who's really successful and you want to know their backstory? And you learn more about them, and the more you learn, the more you want to know. Well, I met someone like that a few weeks ago in a very unusual capacity. It turns out this guy was a very successful computer programmer. He was a systems analyst. He was a manager. He had this huge successful company. He represented Fortune corporations in senior executive sales levels, marketing, territorial management, everything. He represented firms in executive sales for Honeywell, Northern Telecom, Harris Corporation, Sperry Univac, and Motorola. Later, he started his own company. He owned his own C-level technology corporation. He ran that company for 17 years. Quite a story. But you know what? That's not how I met this guy. Not at all. Something happened to him that changed his life. You might relate to this. Did you ever get so angry at something happening? Maybe you got angry at someone or something, and you say, I'm going to take action. I'm going to dedicate my entire life to solving this issue. What happened to this particular gentleman that I just described to you is his cat was killed. His cat was killed by a coyote. In fact, he vowed to go after that coyote and their family members. In every generation of coyotes from that point forward, the problem is he had this huge successful business. So he quit. He quit his business, all of them. He let them all wind down, spun them off, got rid of them completely. In fact, he even brought his wife into his quest to go after coyotes. If you live in the Charlotte area, you know this guy is Coyote Bill. His name is Bill Crowder. You see him all the time. He's on all the social media platforms. My wife talked about him for weeks, months even, before I actually looked into him a little bit. And the reason my wife was talking about him is we had a coyote problem, a big coyote problem in our neighborhood. Coyotes were all over the place. They were running around at night, and coyotes are actually what turned out to have killed Bill's cat. And Bill quit his jobs about 3 years ago to go after coyotes, but not in the way you might think. He looks like a hunter. He looks like a kind of guy, you can see him if you're watching this on a television screen, the kind of guy that would go hunting in an African safari. And he doesn't actually want to necessarily kill coyotes. And as you get to know him, you find out that he wasn't so much angry in a passionate or dispassionate way where he wanted to get revenge. He just wanted people to be informed, so it doesn't happen to other people's cats and other people's dogs. Bill Crowder is joining us this morning, and I'm so happy you decided to come on with us. Bill, thanks for joining us today.
Gosh, John, thank you so much for the opportunity. Looking forward to your questions, and this has been an amazing venture. You know, we're in our fourth year now. We will accomplish over 1,000 calls in this year that we're working on right now on site for coyote problems. That's how robust the coyote problem is. And it's not just in our local area. It is a continent-wide issue that's taking place.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk about. So when we had the initial coyote problem, I told my wife, call animal control. And she said, I did. They told me to call Bill Crowder. And I said, no, they didn't. And she said, yeah, they did. They said they asked me if anybody was attacked or chased after. And when I said no, they said it's not something we handle, but this guy knows a lot. And that's where I knew that you were legit, because I used to be a news reporter. I've never called a public entity and they gave me the name of a private individual and said, call this guy. I was just flabbergasted. So not surprising that you got the 1,000 calls, and not surprising that it's a big problem. Let's talk about let me start by talking about, so you came out and I didn't know what to expect. You came to our neighborhood and tell us what you found, or tell us what you did.
Well, you know, you have to get to specifics of a specific area if you're trying to determine what's going on with the coyotes. There's all kinds of general information that you can get from the Humane Society websites. You can get them off the state websites, State Wildlife. You can get them off Mecklenburg County's website or any of the surrounding. The general information on how to coexist with coyotes is readily available. Specific information about your property and how to deal with coyotes through their ever-changing cycles is not quite as simple. So you have to learn your coyotes.
How did you learn about coyotes?
Well, I learned about coyotes. They were not in this area throughout my lifetime. I was a hunter many years ago, and then I abruptly stopped hunting. I don't kill any animals. And so instead, I now recognize I saw the problem coming about 5 years ago from a general sighting once a month or once a week, or starting to see them coming into the neighborhoods and people's pets being killed. So it caught my attention about 10 years ago, but I've sort of paid attention up to now. When they killed my cat August 4th, 2019, we had the cats all confined to the inside because of coyotes. He picked the lock on an in-only pet door, snuck out after 1:30 in the morning.
Your cat did that?
It did that. And by 4:30 a.m. that morning, in 4 hours time, our cat was dead 5 feet from our bedroom window outside. It was so distressing after we had tried to protect them for all this time that we had started studying for about a year beforehand, because my mother-in-law's cat was killed before ours at W.T. Harris and Sharon Amity in Charlotte, in city limits.
By a coyote?
By a coyote, yeah, inside the carport, up on her car. So we started studying, Bonnie and I did, and we hazed our property. We looked for coyotes. We put up cameras. We did everything we knew to do, and they still got him. They still got him. It was so distressing, I called Animal Control, and Animal Control told me to call North Carolina Wildlife. North Carolina Wildlife said it's really not a wildlife issue. It's really a county problem. Talk to your Animal Control again. And I did, and they said, well, there's nothing they can do. And what we found out is there really is no agency to help us. So the way I became involved in coyotes is from going in and learning their psyche. I go into the coyote's mind in my mind.
That's what I find fascinating. Tell me more about that.
Well, the coyote operates on cycles that change every couple of months, and within those cycles are subcycles, and that subcycle is determined by their demeanor, and their demeanor is changing every week. So you have to get to know your coyotes to get inside of what they're thinking.
How do you do that?
Well, it comes from their cycles, because if you think about it, let's say they're in a pup training, which we're in right now. Mm-hmm. We will be dispersing those pups into the total herd in the next couple of weeks, and that's where the pups become full-fledged adults and go out to make their own way in life, find their own monogamous mate, and find their territory. And as they make this migration move, they're not interested in databasing pets, or they're not trying to consider how to protect pups. They're actually instead working on the cycle that they're in and the business of that cycle. So to really understand the specifics of the coyote, like in your area, you have to get inside their psyche of why they're there, the motivation of why the coyote is there.
So when you came out a few weeks ago, you immediately knew the cycle they were in. And tell us about that.
Well, that's where you start, because that's their motivation. You know, they will leave that area after that cycle change, or even sometimes on the demeanor change. You know, they'll go through from the pup training, they'll move into the migration, which is where the whole herd that is unsettled is released into the group.
My God, how many pups are in a herd?
2 to 12.
2 to 12?
2 to 12, an average of about 6 or 7.
So you got 6 or 7 pups and mom and dad?
Yes.
So 9 coyotes are running around at any given time?
That's what's happening during pup training. Now, when pup training is over...
What are they training them to do?
They're training them to be adults.
How so?
Well, if they're born in May, by the 1st of September, they have to be fully trained to stand on their own merit.
And what kind of training do they get?
They go out, they learn about 3 different ways.
Obedience training? Or
They do learn obedience training. The parents put them in positions and tell them to stay there, and they do. They put them in little round beds. Yeah, they put them in little round beds, or put them up under a deck. They actually position these pups while they go out, not harvest the prey, but bring the prey back for the pups.
They're still alive?
Sometimes. At the early stages of training to kill, yes, they are.
And we talked about cats. What other kind of prey do they go after?
Well, they go after small rodents, any type of possums, raccoons, a lot of fawns. They do kill quite a few fawns. They get full-grown deer and cycles where they're working together as family groups.
Yeah, that was fascinating and scary. Tell me about that.
Well, we investigate. We do suddenly missing pets, risk assessment of homes, and kill investigations. So we've probably done 100 or more kill investigations, and probably about 20 of those were deer and or fawns. Wow. So they, South Carolina published a statistic a couple of years ago that 70% of the fawns in South Carolina were killed by coyotes.
70%?
70%.
Wow.
Yeah. So that got my attention. It's also said that over about 20 years, it's affected the herd population by as much as about 30%.
Meaning their deer herd population.
Yes. Now, I happen to believe that we are urban and suburbanizing all animals.
Tell us what that means.
The deforestation and development is the coyote magnet, and it's all animals' magnet. They come to populations because they're safe, because there's ample food supply. The deer just love all the landscaping that we do, all the flowers and plants and trees and shrubs that they just love to eat. Brings them in. It brings all the other animals in as well. Plus, we as humans are very wasteful. We put a lot of food stuff in garbage cans, dumpsters, and the coyotes and other animals learn that that's their food source rather than being in the wild. So as you see the decline of population in the rural areas, you're seeing an increase in population in suburban and urban areas of not only coyotes, but most animals.
Yeah. Tell me about your discovery. So I found your discoveries. I expected you to come out and say, oh yeah, there's pups, or do you have any pictures or something? And you didn't really do that so much as you didn't just discover that there was pups, but you discovered where they were sleeping, where they were hunting, where they were preying, what they were eating. I thought that was fascinating. Why don't you tell us how you determine that? Like, for example, you even determined the weight of the animals that you never saw, and just based on the way they made their beds and things. Tell us about that.
Well, it's just experience. You know, we've done it so long now, for 4 years, every day in the field, sometimes 5, 6, 7 calls in a day. Yeah. That we learn what we're talking about, the depth of the depression and the size of the tracks tell us the size of the coyote. You
showed us some tracks that were really big that I actually thought were deer tracks. And you pointed out what the difference was and how they're coyote tracks. And then based on the size, that helped you determine the weight, right?
Right.
Yep. And then I know you showed us some indentions in the pine straw, or not so much indentions, but like it looked like to me, it looked like a dog that would go in there with his paw and just scratch out pine straw and find a place to lay, and then make a couple circles and lay down. Is that what coyotes do also?
That's what a coyote canine does. It is a dog, and it does scratch the ground out and deer do this too, but it's to remain silent so they can move around without making noise. If they lay down in lay down on a group of leaves and make the slightest move, they can be vulnerable to detection. Right. So they're actually protecting themselves, and they'll dig out a little spot to lay in, or to place a pup in, or to go on about their business. They'll actually use those areas, and you can determine them. That's how we learn. Yeah. We go in, we determine where they are using game trails. We move the game trails, we can follow them, and they'll lead us to den trails if the dens are nearby. In your case, you had a thoroughfare. Yours was a thoroughfare between neighborhoods because the golf course has the fencing that blocks the largest part of your road. Wow. There are also houses beside and down your street that have fences. So your area has the hole in the fence at the golf course, and every animal has learned that's their thoroughfare. Wow. So all we had to do was find their thoroughfare, backtrack their trails, follow those trails to determine their motivation. Then we would see exactly what we learned at your house.
You know, I've seen pictures of them. I've watched videos of them, and I've heard how dangerous they can potentially be to lure dogs by coming out and running away from a dog, so the dog would chase it, and then the dog chases it into a pack, and I thought of coyotes as just the devil. But then we saw them. We came out one morning, my dog was barking, I thought she had to go to the bathroom, I took her out, it was 1:30 in the morning, and there was that's right before we called you, and there was this big pack of coyotes, and they were going puff, 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 doing these little huff things, and they looked like little German shepherds to me, and my whole persona changed. I thought, I can't harm these things. These are like dogs. How much are they like dogs?
Well, they're 100% like dogs. Wolves, coyotes, and dogs are all canines.
Wow.
And they interbreed, believe it or not.
I could believe that, sure.
In fact, the ones that we are working with here it's actually come from a national migration.
Okay.
That has encompassed the entire United States and, in fact, the whole continent. They started in the Midwest as plains animals. They're not woodlands animals. They're not in the woods. They only go to the woods to hide. They prefer where they can smell the furthest distance. So they like golf courses and open parking lots and neighborhoods.
Yeah.
They can smell a lot further, so they're safer.
Wow.
But they migrated, and there's two different factions. The southern faction remained the western coyote. That's a little 35-pound coyote. These the traditional coyote that you hear about. Mm-hmm. The ones that went north actually picked up a crossbreed between the hybrid bred between the wolf and the dog, the domestic dog.
You're showing me a map, just for the audience. You show me a map that shows, and this is maybe it's a coincidence, North and South Carolina. The northern coyotes went to North Carolina, and the southern ones went to South Carolina.
Well, sort of, yes, they did. As a matter of fact, because the northern route brought them down from the northeast through Virginia and into North Carolina. The southern ones actually came through through Texas and Louisiana and Florida, and came into South Carolina earlier than the northern route.
Are they actually different breeds?
Yes, they are a variation of breed. All breeds are the coyote,
right.
And then there's 19 different subspecies of those coyotes.
Wow.
Now, they have recently started claiming this one to be the eastern, where this one is the western.
Okay.
So the western gets up to about 35 pounds max, and that's a big male. Mm-hmm. On the northern route, when they picked up the wolf, they became larger animals with a few different variations and characteristics.
Yeah.
But their average size is about 45 pounds, and some get up into the 55-pound, maybe even approaching the 60 or more range.
Wow.
So that's really what has happened, and why there's two different sizes of coyotes. But we don't see many of the western anymore because the eastern are larger and overpower and take over the territory.
So for people who aren't local, we're in North Carolina, and you just described what the problem is and how they're migrating over. And I assume they don't migrate the way people do in one giant trip with backpacks and things. And so that would tell me that they're all over the place, like you said, all over the continent. And they're going from a nuisance to a real concern. Tell me, besides pets, kind of an obvious one, why else would they be a concern?
Well, we're in some uncharted territory right now. And this is where the research and former publications, to me, don't hold future information.
Because they're just dated by now.
Because they've run out of territory in the whole continent.
Wow.
Now, as long as they've had migration room, what is a migration? A migration is where they've had their pups, they've trained their pups, and these pups are now to go make their own way in life.
Right.
So the whole high coyote herd in September starts their migration all over the continent. All these pups are released. They're all running around everywhere. It's mass confusion.
How far do they go from the home base?
Up to about 300 miles.
300 miles? Mm-hmm. Like halfway to Florida, or in Florida by then.
And the territories can be up to about 10 square miles for a female and up to 30 square miles for a male.
Wow.
Now, what we're seeing, though, is compression of those territories due to population. There's a lot of speculation that we go in, we wipe out the woods, we deforest the land, mm-hmm. and we build houses, apartments, condos, shopping centers, strip malls, all the things on there. And therefore, we drive the coyotes out of their natural habitat into the populated areas. We thought that as well in 2018.
Yeah.
In 2018, you could read my posts, and they were exactly that.
Yeah.
We're running them out of their habitat.
Yep.
After working with coyotes every day for 4 years now, I no longer believe that. They really do not care if it's an apartment, a house, or a thicket. You
were telling me about their growth. You think their growth is due to population expansion. Tell me about that, and the doubling of their population. Tell me about that.
Yeah, we're seeing an annual growth, an exponential reproduction with no predators.
So who were their predators before? Wolves?
Wolves.
Yep.
And people. Of course, people are still predators, hunters, trappers, and cars, automobiles. Yep. Coyotes some will die from infighting with other coyotes, defending or claiming territories. And others will have a little disease that will kill a few. But by and large, the herd is increasing, as you can see. Just listen to any news, any sightings, your neighbors, social media. And 10 years ago, we never heard of a coyote hardly.
No. So when we talked earlier, how often do they double in population?
We're seeing an increase in calls, which we relate to doubling, about every year.
Wow. Every year they double.
So far, we've reached that point to where they look like the number of calls is related to a doubling. We're seeing larger family sizes remaining together instead of 1 or 2 coyotes together.
Wow.
We're seeing as many as 6, 7, or 8 in some cases in the cycles where they family.
Wow. You gave us some really good advice on what to do about this coyote concerns. What was the advice you gave us and you should give people?
Well, there's general information on coyotes that you can get off of websites, the Humane Society, the state websites, Mecklenburg County, et cetera, and then there's specifics about your own property and what to do. General information on how to deter coyotes and specific information. Yeah, the general is just the lighting and, maybe some noisemakers, floodlights, et cetera. Yeah. The specifics, on the other hand, are once you know your coyote, once you hone down on how they're using your property.
And the time of year. Yeah.
And the time of year based on the cycle, then you go in and deter them by upsetting their usage. In your case, we found beds. We found where they were actually trying to den. So we were able to help you understand what to do to move them on.
And what did you tell us to do?
Well, we told you to we told you to haze the property.
And tell us what that means.
Hazing means to make noise and disrupt the coyote, use it as a deterrent device.
Because they're generally scared of people, right?
They're generally scared of people until they desensitize to people.
Right.
Now, they might walk away from you and turn around and stare at you, almost in trying to antagonize you. As the population increases, there will be more encounters, there will be more sightings, and there will be a few more people bitten than there were in past years because there weren't the quantity and not getting the encounters.
Right.
But coyotes do not see people as prey. Humans are not their food. Humans are providing their food in their own mind once they have become desensitized.
Right.
Therefore, once you have this desensitization where you start to hear of a coyote attacking someone, it's very common for it to be a fed coyote. The coyote has interpreted the human provides their food, and when they don't provide the food, the coyote will come up and nip them on the calf of the leg.
My dog does that.
Yeah, exactly.
In a nice way, though.
Exactly.
Wow, that's amazing.
What we do is we educate people. We provide research and education and advice. If someone wants to trap coyotes or to eliminate coyotes, we have resources. We can connect the two.
Wow.
We don't kill them. We don't trap them, but we do have resources that do for those that want to.
Has anyone ever trapped them and then relocated them somewhere in the wild?
Relocation of a rabid vector animal is illegal in most states, including North and South Carolina. So if you trap one, you must dispatch it humanely.
Wow. That's
so it has
too
to
bad.
be killed.
Wow. So it seems like as people get more educated, they're going to keep pushing coyotes into other people's areas, and then those people will get educated. And so, in fact, the coyotes in my neighborhood may have been a result of people being educated in the neighborhood next to mine and pushing them over to me, and I did the same to the next, and it's going to be an ongoing issue. Do you think the government needs to get more involved?
I think there needs to be a solution presented that the state, the county, and the homeowner all participate in dealing with problematic coyotes together as one.
That's a great solution. And Bill, you and your wife do this as a charity, as a nonprofit, right?
It's a non-revenue, effectively. We don't charge for anything.
That's great. How can people, if people want to, it's very altruistic of you to do that. If people want to help, if they want to contribute, if they want to volunteer, first of all, do you even welcome that? Do you want volunteers and things?
We do. In fact, this year will be a growth year. We have to replicate ourselves to be able to continue the growth because the demand on us is too great for the two of us.
So you guys have become the Coyotes. You're going to expand and grow and take and educate. I'm sure there's got to be other places in the country where there's people like you, but I've never met them, and I think it's amazing what you guys are doing. If they want to volunteer, if it's okay with you, we'll let them know they can reach out to you, and possibly even see chapters in other parts of the country where they're having a problem like that too. Bill, thank you for joining us today. It's been a phenomenal interview, and I know we could talk for a lot longer because you're extremely interesting, as is Bunny, and I appreciate you letting me accompany you a little bit on Saturday too, and checking things out and showing me the fruits of your labor and what we should learn. So thanks for joining us on rBeatz Radio.
Thank you.
All right.
I'm Coyote Bill, and you're listening to rBeatz Radio Network.